Hello, today we are going to learn how to memorize Pāḷi. The Pāli language is good to memorize because you don't have to rely on translations. You can know the words directly, and you can also chant in groups, and you can feel harmonious by doing this, and also through putting the extra time in to memorize the Pāli words, you're actually focusing more and spending more energy in terms of learning and memorizing these words. So therefore, it is a good practice to do, and I totally recommend it. The problem is that we don't have the education on how to memorize words by rote memory. We don't have this education in the West, where it's very common in the East. So I'm going to explain to you how people memorize and how to some different techniques, and then that'll be the end of the video. The first thing that you want to do is you want to learn the meaning of the individual words that you're trying to memorize. This is very helpful because then you are building a vocabulary in the Pāli language. I'm sure that many of you would like to actually read Pāli in its native form. So this is one step in doing so. And also it helps you to become familiar with the words so that you're not memorizing syllables, but you're actually memorizing words. The next thing that you need to do is you need to be able to know the individual grammar of the words. So this is also very important because the endings are going to change based on the grammar. So you will also need to know a little bit about the grammar and try to understand how the word changes. You don't need to memorize different charts and all the different endings and prepositions and verb forms, but you should have an idea that when the word ends in anam or asa or something, that you should have an idea of what grammar applies to that, because there's a lot of subject-verb agreement and the adjectives agree with the nouns, and so you have to, if you can memorize that, if you can understand that, then when you're chanting in the Pāli, you can understand how it flows much better. The next thing is also the pronunciation. So you're taking the time to learn something, so you need to learn how to pronounce the words correctly. So there are double consonants, and then there are long and short vowels. And so it's very important to understand the pronunciation because it's how the rhythm of what you're chanting formulates. And so when you're doing that, your mind will be memorizing different tonations. You're going to have different tones if you do a toning method of chanting. And it's also your mind is going to know the rhythm. This is also very good for chanting in groups so that you're all in synchronicity with each other. So there are long vowels which get longer times, and you have double consonants which also have longer times for the flow. So this is very important to do as well. So take the time to learn the proper pronunciation, learn the aspirated consonants as well, and try to understand about the pronunciation. This is not a pronunciation class, but I hope that you can learn correctly the first time, because that's what will stick. So once you get the meaning, the grammar, and the pronunciation correct, you can go ahead and try to memorize the Pāli in either a passive way or an aggressive way. I'm going to be focusing more on the aggressive way, but the passive way to memorize something is to take something that's short and just to read it once a day or twice a day for a couple months, 3 months, or whatever. Just make it part of your chanting routine, and then after a few months, you'll have it memorized automatically. This is the passive way. But you should pay attention to the meaning, the grammar, and the pronunciation. And when you chant in groups, also the pronunciation and the rhythm and the tonings will also come automatically. So if you're by yourself, if you can get a chanting tape, or you can ask a monk to record some chanting for you, then this will help a lot. And just a little bit of a warning, although I'm in Myanmar, do not learn pronunciation from a Myanmar monk or follow the Myanmar chanting, because the pronunciation is very different. So I recommend Sri Lankan chanting. I think that's quite good. I like that the best, but stay away from the excessively slow and melodious Sri Lankan chanting. That is also not so good. The Thai also chant quite well. The Thai chanting is quite good. The pronunciation is good, so this can help you. It depends what you want. The aggressive way is to do aggressive rote learning. So this is something that we just don't know in the West. I guess that the people who design curriculums, they're very naturally intelligent, and those who are naturally intelligent usually have high rates of memory. They can memorize things very quickly, and so unfortunately they think that this is a waste of time, and they're more interested in problem-solving abilities and trying to figure things out, and this type of learning, which is very important, but they seem to have just thrown away the whole idea of repetitions and rote learning. So I'm going to talk about this. This is very important because it's not in the Western vocabulary or technique vocabulary. So what you want to do is you want to repeat again and again and again. This is rote learning, but don't just stare at what you're trying to memorize. You should verbally pronounce things, and you can even do it loud, and you can also do it fast. And so what you want to do is you want to take a small chunk. You want to take one line, like a sentence, but you have to be careful. Sometimes the sentences are quite big, and so you need to break it up into phrases sometimes. And so you want to do a chunk that's compatible with your memory style or your memory abilities. So you have to figure this out. What you consider one sentence or one line or one phrase, how many words, how many syllables this is. So you take that line and you figure out the meaning, you figure out the grammar, you figure out the pronunciation, and you start chanting it. And you'll take that line and chant it again and again and again. You'll stumble over the pronunciation. Eventually you'll get smoother and smoother and smoother. Then you start repeating again and again and again until you can start doing it faster with proper pronunciation, and you can do it faster and faster and faster. Now, one of the things that I use, which I recommend getting, is we call this a mala. A mala is a rosary bead, and so there's 108 beads, and one round will be 100. You count 100 for 108 in case you miss a couple. And so if you do something 100 times, you'll probably have it burned into your memory quite well. So it'll take about 30 or 40 times maybe to have into your memory if it's completely new words, maybe up to 50 or 60, and then you'll have it memorized. And then what you want to do is overlearn. It's very important to overlearn what you're trying to memorize. And I would recommend just doing one line per day. And because what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to cumulatively review what you have previously learned. So when you learn something, we'll call each line just a number. So you do line number 1, okay? Then the next day you're going to do line 1, line 2. Then the next day you're going to do line 1, line 2, line 3. Then the next day you're going to do line 1 plus line 2, line 3, and plus line 4, and so forth. So it's important to do like this because when you learn the other lines, you will start to forget the previous lines. It just sort of just knocks it all out. So what you need to do is you need to have them refreshed. You focus on the line that you're working on, and then you need to be smooth with the previous lines. If you're not smooth with the previous lines, if you forget the previous lines, you should not move forward until you get them really, really well known inside your mind. You should have everything cold. You should not have to work hard. When we know something cold, we don't have to work very hard in order to pull this from our memory. It's like speaking right now. I can speak English cold. It's very easy. I don't have to think so much. Although speaking to a video camera might be a little bit difficult, but this is how we do it. So you want to overlearn, and you also don't want to do too much per day. You want to space out your learning. And what's very important is to only do maybe 1 or 2 hours per day. In the beginning, it's just going to be 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And but after you start getting a few lines, it's going to start building up. And so you can do 1 or 2 hours per day. This is what someone who's memorizing the Patimokkha will spend, and it takes about 3 months. Although I know someone who was able to do it in 3 days. So a majority of it, he had some of it memorized. But some people are quick learners and some people are slow learners. And I think that's where the phrase comes, quick and slow, is the amount of repetitions before you actually memorize something. But I do believe that everyone can memorize Pāli. It's just a matter of the amount of time you put in. And that's the difference. Someone's slow and someone's quick. And so for me, it took 4 months. I'm older or whatever. It took me 4 months to learn the Patimokkha. But again, you want to space out your learning. And when I say that you do 1 or 2 hours per day, actually what you should do is you should space out that 1 or 2 hours per day where you do maybe 30-minute chunks. You could do a 30-minute, 20-minute, or 30-minute chunks 4 to 5 or 6 times per day, 15-minute chunks or whatever you feel comfortable with. The most important time to learn is right before you go to bed, the last thing before you go to bed, and also the first thing when you wake up. These are some of the most important times. If you take a nap, also it's very good to do this before and after if you take a nap. So that's the most important thing, spaced out learning. You have to space out your learning. You have to do the repetitions. You have to overlearn it. Once you have it memorized, you have to overlearn it, maybe do it another 30 or 50 times. It's short. It doesn't take long to do 100 times. So you have to keep that in mind and just force yourself to overlearn it. It's very important. So you want to, in review, you want to get the meaning. You want to get the grammar of the individual words and the whole sentence, and then you want to get the pronunciation right. You can passively learn. You can passively learn by just chanting once or twice a day, and eventually you'll have it memorized if it's short. If it's long, it's almost impossible to memorize it. But if it's short, like Karaniya Metta Sutta or something like that, it's very easy to memorize this through the passive way. It's a lazy way. It's actually a recommended way. If you want to go with the aggressive way, you want to do 1 plus 2, 1, then 1 plus 2, 1 plus 2 plus 3, and then so forth. And you want to cumulatively review and make sure that you do one line at a time. You want to not go forward unless you have the previous lines done. You want to do this every day. You want to spread out your learning, space out your learning. Even if you do 1 or 2 hours per day, you don't want to do that all at once. You want to break it up. First thing when you wake up, and last thing before you go to bed, before you close your eyes. You want to have that. You want to bring the book to bed with you and just go through your repetitions and make sure you have that memorized. And so that's how you memorize Pāli. I wish you the best of luck. May you be able to memorize the most important Pāli phrases so that you can attain Nibbana safely and quickly. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.